Okay, let's get started. So today we're going to talk about the UKA Trackmark certification system. There's been a lot of great work being done by UKA and the athletics governing bodies around the UK to get this system up and running. I'm Neil McPhee, Associate Director at Sports Labs. Got a testing background and I work up in Scotland in the Livingston branch, the headquarters. David Dickinson will be on the call as well. David's our consultancy manager, works a lot on the design, procurement and track construction process on behalf of Sports Labs Consult. David's been very well integrated into the UK Trackmark system and had a lot of feedback to UK and helped them with the system. We've also got Joe Miller on the call as well, and Joe's one of our technicians that's on the ground. We'll be doing some of the testing. So today you can ask questions. You can raise your hand on the mobile device or the laptop you're using. You can do that, or you can fire in a question, and we'll try and answer the questions throughout the presentation or revisit them at the end. As mentioned, this is just a light introduction to Trackmark. It's to give people the opportunity to discuss some of the implications of the system, what the units are, and how we approach these units for testing and what's expected. So a little bit more about Sports Labs. So we're a testing institute and a consultancy practice. We do a lot of product testing in the laboratory, but this type of testing is done on site. We're World Athletics accredited, and we also cover the accreditations with UKA, local governing bodies. So as well as doing the performance testing, which we'll talk about today, we do dimensional surveys, design and expert witness services. And some of our keynote certifications recently were the Tokyo Olympics, although that's been delayed. The track has still been certified and installed. We did the Gold Coast in Australia and the World Cup Championships in Qatar recently. So today we're obviously going to talk more specifically about the UKA Trackmark system. And what's important about the UKA Trackmark system is it gives us nationally a system to operate with for safety and performance. And the UKA takes the reports that are provided by the accredited bodies and they decide upon receipt of these reports if they can certify the facilities. Similar to the FA register for artificial football pitches, it's a very good, open, transparent and clean system for people to see if tracks can be used in their area to what level. So sometimes with the World Athletics system, it's quite expensive to certify a product or a track, and it's also a lot more invasive the assessments you do on the site. So we're going to cover today the certification process, units 1, unit 2, unit 5. The unit 1 is the track, unit 2 is the field, and unit 5 is the floodlighting. We'll touch upon unit 6, the competitions, which is you need knowledge if you're going to have a level 2 competition or a high profile event. There's also the benefits of Trackmark and you know what it brings to the industry, what it brings to end users, and the support it can give facility managers across the UK. We'll go very briefly into a case study, so how some tracks have used particular units and not other ones. And then we'll cover the volume of track marks and we'll cover questions and discussions at the end. Okay, so this is a brief overshot of the UK Trackmark system. It's been publicised by UKA regularly, and it's a very good oversight of what's involved in the process for all the units in the system. You can pick and choose the ones you want depending on what you're doing at the facility. And they have, for each of these, they have a RAG system, so red, amber, green traffic light system. So if you get a red, then you need to do some immediate reactive repairs. If you have an amber, you've got to look at doing the repairs, and if you've got a green, you get a thumbs up, you can move forward and use the facility. There's an Excel spreadsheet with all the compliant, working towards and non-started projects. So when we talk about working towards, there's a system where facilities can start the process. You have to show evidence, you have to get test reports. So this is important that it doesn't have to be done overnight, it can be done over a period of time. So you can be in the process, you can be working towards. And some, as I say, have not started. In terms of the level of competition, we've got level 1s and level 2s here. So level twos are, your high-end elite competitions, and level ones are more community-based. I think this is opposite to what you would expect from a World Athletics certification, where class one is your full scope and very invasive, whereas your level two is just your dimensional survey. There will be additions to this in the future in terms of the scope of works, but at the moment we'll talk about what we're doing live today. So the background, UK Athletics committed to raising the standards of tracks and fields across the UK, and that's what's important. It's a governing body offering a system for people that want to use it, and really saying we want our facilities safe for the end users. We want them to perform at a certain level to enhance, the ability of users to develop. And it's a quality assurance scheme. It was launched in 2018 in October, and I think there's an obligation for governing bodies to have these days. We can see a significant increase in the number of requests for certification programs across governing bodies, and it's important that, particularly when you get to a higher level, the host competition knows the level of track is sufficient to host that event. And I think it's also good to note that all these units encourage the facility to develop their personnel, develop their knowledge, develop their maintenance. So what we'll talk about today is the ones that are in blue, and the ones that are in red are actually done remotely or through evidence-based checks with the portal system. So when someone signs up for the system, the Trackmark system, they get a portal, and they can use that portal to develop or progress their application. And what's quite important as well, as I mentioned, there's an increase in requests for certification around the world, and this is an example of the tracks in the UK, a map. And you can see an example track certificate, where, for example, Wavertree here has unit 1 to 6, and it's a competition certificate. This is not the competition certificate; it's an over summary of the units achieved. I think as well, if you look at over the years, there's been an increase of, say, 11 in 20 years. We've had 11 times more certifications at World Athletics level of tracks, and I think there's that due diligence and corporate responsibility for these governing bodies to protect the end users and the member associations, and that's mostly down to increased injury claimants and legal cases. We often hear about them in the US, but I think we start to hear more about them in European countries as well. As well as the site, we've also got surface products. So product certification is done, and that's increased 3 times. So that tells us that there's 3 times more products in the market than there was 20 years ago. That's important because that means there's a lot more different systems out there that offer different benefits, and it's a lot more difficult to control those in terms of performance and safety. And in terms of equipment and implementation or implements, is again 2 to 3.5 times amount now than there was before. Okay, so the benefits we've touched upon, but we'll just go a little bit more deeper into it, is the fact that the certification system is there for people to use and rely on and trust. There's been a lot of cases where there's been fatalities or there's been injuries on in specific cages or things happening over the last couple of years where there's been questions raised about what is the process for ensuring this is safe for our users. There's also the point that people pay to use these facilities. So there's an obligation of the facilities to bring these certificates to the forefront. It also adds weight to funding applications and asks the question, do you do things in the right way as a facility manager? So we're going to jump straight into Unit 1, and what we're going to talk about in Unit 1 is the performance testing and the site visit that we undertake, and it's something that you get a report for. All the reports for Unit 1 are UKA draft reports. They're set templates. So the purpose of that is to ensure that the assessors that are out there are looking at the same thing every time, so they become used to that document. They understand if that document is a good thing or a bad thing, and if they can then apply certification and use of that facility at certain levels. So what we'll talk about with the testing is a thickness assessment, the shock absorption, slip resistance, and a detailed visual assessment. And again, we'll refer back to this RAG system of red, amber, and green. So first of all, I suppose, where are the test locations on the track? And if you look here at the visual inspection, we look everywhere on the track, and we split it up into segments or areas, so we can easily identify if there's repairs, where those repairs are. It's something that's very important, because as someone that's going to repair a track, you need to know exactly what you're repairing and where it is. We have a lot of phone calls and emails over the last few years of people trying to find a defect that we found on the track, and sometimes these defects are very difficult to spot by eye. Okay, so that's a diagram there. You can see the types of defects we would see on the track, from delamination right the way through to splitting and cracking, or ponding. Ponding is quite common. So the visual inspection of ponding, we don't do an infiltration test on the surface for UKA, but what we do is we try and pick it up with our visual inspection, and generally you can see that with discoloration. These are some example pictures that we would highlight in the report, and you would get this in every report. You get a note and a photo explaining the concern or the area. With thickness, we look obviously at the thickness of the track, and the importance here is we're looking for above a base level. If the track is too thin, then it becomes a safety hazard. Repeat loading on an athlete can turn into a long-term injury. Then we have shock absorption, which will also lead to long-term injuries or safety aspects for a user. We're looking again for a bare minimum figure, and similarly with slip resistance, we're looking at a minimum figure as well. And that's again to ensure the safety of the end user. And consistency across the track is important as well. What you can see here is the locations of shock absorption and slip resistance testing, and where we undertake those tests. Okay. This is an example of the RAG system and what the tolerances are that we expect tracks to meet. If you're sitting in the red category, there's a problem. It needs to be repaired, resurfaced, retopped, whatever is deemed the problem needs to be resolved. And you can see in the amber, there's areas highlighted, and then green is a pass. So the green is really an indication of what you'd expect at a European or World Athletics level. So that's what we're working towards. But in terms of ambers, we're saying we don't want to stop participation. We want to encourage people to use facilities, but there needs to be work done to make sure that the track is safe long term. Okay, just a quick example report, and what we've got here is the Unit 1 report. I've taken out the names and the report numbers for obvious reasons, for confidentiality, but this is what you would expect to see. You get the front page, the RAG system on the front page or the second page, and that would tell you if you've got an amber or you've got a red. You really need to spend some time looking at that and figuring out what to do to go forward. There's comment sections. And also in Unit 1, you have to provide a CAD drawing or a layout drawing of the track. So some of these things can be uploaded, or they can be provided to the laboratory who will include it in the report. Okay, examples of our visual inspections. You can see some obvious problems here. We talked about ponding, algae contamination, and some of these tracks will just need a little bit of TLC. An overspray, or sometimes you need something more invasive, and that's really what we're there to do, is to give advice on the track and identify problems for safety. Okay, so we're going to move on to thickness now, and the reason that I'm talking about thickness is because one of the things that I experienced when I came into industry was the difference between total thickness and absolute thickness, and the reason I highlight this is when we're on site testing a track, we test total thickness. So simple, you can see the depth gauge in the photo. It's pretty simple. We measure the thickness of the track down to the asphaltic layer, or what the base engineered layer is of the track. Absolute thickness is a laboratory-based test. We remove 50% of the texture depth, so it's slightly different. and it's something that we wouldn't refer to in the UKA report. So that's just a little bit of clarity on the type of thickness we're testing. We do this usually every 10 metres in each lane, and we report that. And as mentioned, there was a minimum tolerance in the RAG system. And shock absorption is a test that we look at how hard the surface is compared to a calibrated concrete figure. It's a safety test, but it can also affect the performance of the athlete as well. If the surface is too soft, then the athlete might not be able to return energy as quickly and move as fast as he usually would in a 100-metre sprint. It's the average of the second and third drop. The first one is a conditioning drop. Slip resistance, underfoot friction, safety hazard again. We don't want a slip hazard on the surface, particularly when people are moving at high speed. There's certain areas that can change over time with contaminants or organic buildup, particularly highway areas, lane 1, throw events, run-ups. These areas are under high stress. The texture of the surface can be worn down and can in turn lead to a slip resistance problem. Tend to find if there's a ponding area on a track, the organic buildup can really affect the top surface in terms of contaminant, and then that can then lead to increased susceptibility to ice or to frost or to in turn a slip hazard. So Unit 2 is a little bit more in depth because you've got different types of things we're looking at, from the pole vaults to the events, the high jump, the long jump, the throw circles, and also the hammer and discus cage. This is a hammer and discus cage is a load bearing test done by ROSPA. So these are specific reports for each individual event, and you would also get a report similar to one I've just provided for Unit 1. What you can see here is that there's also I suppose an obligation to make sure your events and your equipment is up to date, up to speed. It's safely secured. There's no what would you call hazards obvious to an athlete that would become in close proximity to them. So this is an example report for a type of event, and we've got a triple jump, long jump here. You can see the front page, very simple. The second page is into your RAG, and in this example, it was a compliant long jump, 1, 2, triple jump as well. And then for each and individual one, you'll get an actual RAG as well. So for long jump 1, you can see what we've inspected and what's of concern. Okay. There's also Unit 5. Unit 5 is an additional test we do. We always propose to do this in the winter months, but we can do it in the summer. The reason for that is we need darkness, and there's certain restrictions when the testing is getting done that needs to be adhered to. So what we're looking at is a tolerance for club venues and international premier venues. The premier venues might be because of TV requirements, or for example, a request for competition levels has been in existence for a while. So we use a calibrated lux meter here to test the lux around the track, and as mentioned, it needs to be done in the hours of darkness. So sometimes it's unsociable hours, and that's what facility managers and people ordering the test will need to understand when we come to site. So an example of this type of report, there is not an actual template for UKA, so you would get a report from the contractor or the company like yourself doing it. This is just an example of one of our reports. You can see the lux meter readings. You can see the front of the reports. It's very simple, easy to understand, and you've got the average for the track events and the average for the field events. So in this example, you would see it would meet the community-based tolerance or club venue tolerance. Okay, so you can see an overshoot of the facility as well, and a problem here with shading in one area, not shadow. So I'm going to touch very briefly upon Unit 6, and the reason for that is that for competition you need to have a level survey done. and the reason for that is because if a track's going to be used at a certain level, if records or achievements of an athlete is important, then it needs to be done in the strictest and most controlled environment. Most dimensional surveys are carried out by the line marker, and that's something that you probably get during the installation of the track. But if a track's been repainted or remarked, relined, then it's something you probably have to get done again. And we do provide that service, but it's a case of evidence to your portal, so you just provide that evidence to the portal. And this is an example of a completion certificate. So what you can see here is the track has been given the completion certificate, or sorry, the competition certificate, to allow it to host high-level events, level 2 events. So I'm just going to touch upon briefly the number of tracks we've got and the program so far. As mentioned, it was launched in 2018. So there's 309 athletics facilities in the UK that are eligible for this system, this accreditation system. And currently, it's an approximate number. There's around about 20 accredited venues so far. I think there was about 12 when the SAPK event was held. We expect them to be several more since then, so that's how we've came to number 20. We've tested around about 50 tracks to date for Unit 1 certification, and I think what's important to note here is at least 92 venues have not even started the process. So there's still a long way to go in terms of tracks getting through that portal and getting the program started. You can also see a full map of where they are, and there's a link online to look into more detail into each tracking facility. Okay, just a quick case study. So what you can see here is a track, and this track received Unit 1, 2, and 5. We did the testing for that. It was a non-porous 400-metre track with a grass infield, and every single unit received a green standard. So that was a good pat on the back and an accolade for the facility manager and the people involved in that track. So it means that they can have confidence. They can host users and in a safe and high performance environment. And also that facility demands the correct footwear is used on the surface, and that's important, to keep the surface performing for a long period of time and getting the most out of their asset. Okay, so something I just wanted to touch upon briefly, and the reason for that is because we don't do any product testing with the UKA system, but in a way, it's a very good thing that they focus on the track, because that's what the end user is. That's where the end user is experiencing any safety or performance limitations, and that's something that a lot of governing bodies, they sometimes focus on the product and not the actual installation. I think with the UKA, they've got a very good system here where they're looking at the installation, and installation quality can vary significantly from contractor to contractor. So it's important that we actually can look at that, and then we don't just think the product has got a good name and a good brand value, and therefore we're going to install that and not worry. We need to always consider things that might change over time with the climatic conditions, the geography. So that's something that we need to look at. And the UK system, as mentioned, is a 3-year recertification period. So what we're saying is that we expect tracks might have changed over that period of time, so we need to go back out and reassess that. And 3 years is quite a common number for community level facilities. Sometimes they'll go to 2, sometimes they'll go to 4. Elite facilities are usually annually. And some of these tests in the product in the laboratory you can see pop up on the right hand side. You've got the UV tester, your despite resistance tester, the Tabor abrasion machine, and these tests are done. So you can always retrospectively do them if you have concerns about the product. Another thing that I'll briefly mention is the World Athletics product list. I talked about the number of products increasing significantly, so we're now up to 242 products listed here. The cost of an elite product to be certified is $25,000 US. So in terms of community facilities, we've got in the UK, we've got something that's very achievable and very accessible. And I suppose the importance here is, although the World Athletics system is there for knowing the product, the UK system is there to really ensure the installation and maintenance and long-term performance of the track is ensured. These documents can be downloaded in UKA and also on the World Athletics website. Here's an example of the certification system, the track products that you might see, so you can always check up on your product and get more information from the manufacturer. And again, this is the World Athletics Class 1 tracks around the world, and this has seen a significant increase over the years. So that's a very brief overshoot of the UKA Trackmark system and Sports Lab's involvement and what we do in the system. The system will evolve. It's a great system. You know, things like surface evenness, a physical test will be brought in. There's a straight edge test that will be brought in, but at the moment it's a visual assessment. These are things that are going to continually evolve, which is great to see in the athletics world. There's going to be a lot more awareness from assessors and awareness from facility managers into how to look after their asset, which is track and the field events. So I thank you for your time. What we'll do is we'll open up the floor for questions and a discussion. We've got David and Joe both online. So if you have any questions, as I say, you can unmute your mic. You can also add a question into the pop-up, and we can deal with that question when they come in.
Neil, it's David. I just wanted to jump in, folks. In my experience anyway, this starting, it's been great for industry because it's highlighted a lot of these facilities really need a lot of investment. It's generated a bit of an interest, a bit of a duty of care to the local authorities, and it's created projects up and down the country. A few of you have probably been involved in a few of them, so it's been very, very positive. And it's well received, so hopefully it continues in this manner.
Yeah, I think for me, David, I mean, working in so many different countries, and we see a lot of local governing bodies not taking responsibility, and the UK have really, you know, grabbed the bulls by the horns here and said, we want safe, we want high performance venues, and we want them categorised, and we want people to know that they have to look after facilities. So there's that opportunity to spread knowledge and make people aware that their tracks might change over time, and it's something that we need to consider in terms of maintenance and ensure that those products last long term.
Yeah, and I think the second part of it is the categories that have been placed on each of the assessment criteria. So that the red, yellow, amber, it's quite fair, and a lot of the clients have been quite receptive to that. So if they're getting an amber, that's indicating to them that the track isn't performing at the absolute level that you would want it to be, but the UK is giving them some time to remediate or think about a new investment in that facility, and it's been really well received. And I think you touched on it, Neil. It's generating discussions at cabinet board level, political level, to get investment into these facilities, which can only be a good thing. It really can.
Yeah, I mean, the red, amber, green system it's so simple to understand, and it's great. I think sometimes it can get very complicated, but this is not. It's there. It's easy. You know what you have to do. You know if your facility is at a high level already. Does it need a little bit of TLC?
Yeah. The other thing I was keen if anybody had any comments on this was if the industry was ready for this investment that seems to have been kick-started into athletics. Do we have the people available to do it? Do we have the materials, the speciality of all the different disciplines that's involved with making these improvements when they're flagged up?
I think what's important, David, is that a lot of these facilities maybe don't need a full redo. They maybe just need a retopping or something that's not as costly as I think as a full reinstall or a new product, and that's maybe awareness and a little bit of realization.
Yep.
If Colin, are you there at SAPCA? It'd be interesting to get SAPCA's input here and understand, you know, the amount of inquiries and from your point of view. I mean, it's a great program. I mean, do you get a lot of feedback?
Hi Neil, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we've
Yep.
got you, Colin. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think from our perspective, I think the session we ran with Ed ran with our support along with you guys and Labosport, etc. I think it, as David touched on just now, it really highlighted the fact that it's kind of flagged up perhaps a lack of what's been happening with athletics facilities over a fairly long period, and as much as they've suffered a little bit with a lack of investment. But I think the good thing to come out of it is that, as you guys were saying, over the last year or so, it's really flagged up what needs to be done from a kind of safety point of view, but also it's made people sort of think a little bit more around things moving forward and reinvestments. And given the good thing of the red, amber, green thing, it kind of gives you a, if you're not quite there yet in terms of it's not perfect, it gives you something to sort of budget for and aim for moving forward. I think historically, in one of my previous roles, we did a lot of work with the UKA probably 15 years ago, pre-Olympics, when they did a very similar program, albeit far less organised and far less defined about how they did it. And we did a lot of refurb work at the time, but it wasn't done in anywhere near the same detail that this is. And I think it's testament to the work that Ed's done and others that it's really flagged up something in a sort of put a good investment program moving forward. And I think it's obviously generating a lot of work. So.
Hi, Kevin. I think you should be on now.
Yeah, can you hear me, boys?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah. I was just going to say that when they first came out, we got a lot of inquiries to carry out the repairs and installation. But the problem we got was that everybody wanted them during the same 2-week period.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kev, I was probably on the other side of that as well. We've sent a few your way over the last 18 months anyway. So no, that's why I asked that question. I feel like it's highlighted that, okay, we might need to do a spray, we might need to totally resurface some of these facilities because they fell into a disrepair. And that's why I'd asked the question. I think we've got a lot of good people doing a lot of good things, but I don't know if we've got enough people.
Yeah, I think going back to what Colin said from SAPCA, I think it's the likes of cricket, the likes of tennis. I suppose these organisations and these programmes are not there yet, whereas UKA, the FA have started to move. And the point you guys make about having the capacity to do it, when you look at natural turf rejuvenations, they always hit the summer months, and it's a massive influx of people to supply the demand, and then they go quiet. So maybe there's something that can be done to manage that flow. Is that something that at UK that Ed is aware of, David, or something that's been addressed?
I think he's aware of it. We've certainly spoke to him about it. But I mean, it's maybe handy if the likes of myself as a consultant would pick the phone up potentially to someone like you, Kevin, and say, well, how are you looking here over this period of time? Have you got capacity to do that? Maybe through some of the SAPCA pitch builders as well, track builders, sorry, ask the question and then relay that back to UKA, because there's no point us sending stuff to take for pricing if it can't be done.
Yeah, the other side of that is that we do quite a lot of work for the UK track builders, in SAPCA, as a specialist installer. That's basically where our work comes from. The other side of it is that, if these can be planned, then I've got the resources to have a specialist crew that can just do the repairs.
Yeah.
Instead of taking them off other jobs when people are shouting, saying we need to get this ticket this week.
Yeah. It's just the other thing for you, Kevin, and I understand this as well, is that you're getting hit with a delay at one site if it's weather restrictive, and then that's knocking on to various other sites. So I understand your pain there.
Yeah,
I've been there.
Yeah. The other side of it is, I mean, we're actually managing to do a few repairs now, because the guys that work for me, they live together, so we're getting around the social isolation bit. But the sites that we're going to that want the repairs, when we highlight that the problem is not the track but the sub base, then they're saying, well, you just got to fix it for now. Do we then have to highlight that if they've had a track report, do we highlight that to yourselves, or do we rely on them to do that to you?
What's happened with that historically has been that if a bit of patching is all they can afford, then the UKA have taken the view on this that a bit of patching is all they can afford, but I'd rather they done that bit of patching if that keeps that track open. That's kind of their pragmatic view on it. That might mean that they don't host a event of significance at some point over the next wee while until they get the full scope of work's done.
David, that's the best thing about this type of programme, is that we're talking domestically on a national level, and the most important thing is keeping high participation numbers. If we close facilities because of something that's not an obvious safety hazard, then the programme is flawed essentially, because we're reducing the number of facilities there, and that's something that global governing bodies are less aware of, because they want a brand image across the globe. So the likes of UKA and the FA register in England with football pitches is the same. They need to keep the pitches open if they're safe to do so. So
yeah. What we tend to find to do, we get reports from you guys, and then obviously the client's asking us for a price. But what I've tend to do now is that I've said, look, there's a week's work here. Let's not just do these repairs. Let's do a week's work. Here's the price. Do as much as we possibly can. And they seem to be appreciating that more than just doing the odd repair. They found the budget to have a week's worth of work done.
That's handy, Kevin. You've probably seen a few. And quite often this will come to me, these issues, as the consultant, if you like. So the guys will flag up problems with the track. The client will say, okay, that track's got problems. How do we fix it? And then it will come to me, and I'll say, right, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that, and then we try and make that, put that into some sort of tender document that can be sent out to various people, just for fairness and for pricing purposes. So maybe there's a better way of doing that, Kevin. I'd be interested to know if there's a better way of doing that, because a lot of time they have to be seen to tender on these things. You can't just directly award.
No, absolutely. But what I'm saying is that when you go to do the site visit, they're saying, well, this is the list we've been given, and then you walk around and things could have changed. And I just say, look, you're going to get better value for money. Here's my price for a week's work and the material. And very often, just lately, they've said, yeah, go ahead, straight away.
I guess, Kevin, a lot of times the facility managers are aware of the problem, but they're waiting for it to be actually highlighted, and when it's highlighted, we better act on it now. I think athletics and our athletes are a bit like tennis players. They're very specific to the surface. They know what they like and they know what they don't like. Now, Joe that's on the call today is a runner, and I had a call with Joe. He tests surfaces for us, but he also runs in his after hours. And one of the things he was saying was he knows the difference between the local tracks. He can feel it in his feet, and that's powerful. It's very, very powerful. So I'd imagine the facility manager is aware of problem, but sometimes they just don't act on them.
And very often they'll say, well, I can afford this, but I can't afford the cleaning.
Yeah.
I know. Kevin, what would normally happen if you go in and do a scope of works, let's say, for a week, and that's quite clear what you've done? I would say that Ed and the guys at UK would accept that if you sent a summary of what you've done back to the lab or whoever's done the UKA assessment, and then we shared that with the UK, I think they would be quite open to accept that the remedial work's been done and granting these facilities their Unit 1 passed certificate without a revisit. I'm pretty sure that would be the way it would work, and I'm pretty sure they'd rely on that. So I think that would be okay.
Yeah, the typical example, we're on a job down south on the south coast, and the actual specification was for about 20 small repairs, cracks, and and we've actually, when I priced it for several days' work, they've actually got 60 repairs done.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between just doing what's on paper and actually saying, well, if we have another day here, we can make it so much better.
Yeah, that's what's important. If someone's got a life expectancy for track and it's in their business model as an asset, and suddenly you cut 4 or 5 years off that because of just a little bit of lax awareness during the life of the track, then that's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, I can send some photographs and anything that what I'm talking about to you guys if you want me to, just to highlight the fact of what the report says and then what we've actually done for 5 days' work, if you like.
Yeah, do that. Follow up on that. Yeah.
I think, Kev, that would be a good sort of two-way thing, because I think Ed, obviously, you know, he's very receptive to kind of working with everybody within the industry, rather than it being like, oh, we think you should do this or we think you should do that. So I think if you can pull some stuff together that shows David and the UKA what can be done by doing things slightly differently, I think that would certainly benefit things moving forward, by the sounds of it.
I think my point at the very start as well is all these programs evolve, and what's been really good with this program is although it started in 2018, it's doing really well already, and it will continue to evolve with new things in the process, whether it be training for people on site or whether it be an additional assessment that's looking more specifically at the subbase, like even the kind of straight edge. But these things will evolve and they'll become more robust over time. I think every single year FIFA release probably 3 or 4 edits of their current manual. So the only way to keep it up to date is go with an electronic copy on the website rather than a hard copy that you get given these days, because they change so quickly.
I think there's going to be a retest suite coming up, obviously, of the ones that we've done initially. They said originally, Ed had said originally 3 years for that. So that indicates it'll be a continuous process. These facilities will be looked at continually over the foreseeable future. I've got a feeling that might extend out to 5 years for new facilities that have been fully resurfaced in line with the World Athletics requirements. But it's all good. It's all good. We're starting to look at these now, so it's going to be good.
The other thing as well, David, is World Athletics have changed their protocols recently, and in terms of product certification and also site certification, these have been, they didn't used to have a limit on them, and now they do. So in terms of years, there's awareness at a global level that they need to continually recheck and recertify. So it should be in the budget and the awareness of the facility managers more so than ever. Okay, we got any more questions, guys? I haven't seen any more pop up, so if you've got any, go for it.
The other question I've got is on materials. The guys that have this IAAF certificate.
Yeah.
But do we know what the materials are of the build-up of that certificate and that test?
So in the World Athletics products report, you look at all the layers and you identify all the layers of type of material, but it's based on product declaration. So apart from the performance test, then the answer is no, Kevin.
It depends, Kevin. I've had a look at this recently. We've been trying to match a system on site, an existing one, when we were doing a flood coat over the top of it, and we got some really decent information on the website for the materials, the original system. They had like a technical data sheet. It had application rates of different stuff like the binder, the EPDM spread. They're not too bad on that one, but I've seen instances where it's been a wee bit more guarded. So if you're trying to match an existing system, then I would always go to the manufacturer first and see what technical information they've got.
Because I mean, obviously you can appreciate when it turns up on site, you're just relying that everything is okay, and sometimes we do get not quite uniform granules for a start.
Right.
And then that obviously impacts on your binder usage and the percentage that you then have to try and adjust to get somewhere near.
Well, I've seen that. We've seen it with thicknesses as well, Kev. It's sometimes hard, but what I would say, I don't know if you've done this before, but it's relatively inexpensive for you to do a sample area, like a 300 by 300, just a small
Yeah.
area before you
The
pick
problem you get with that is that if you can do that by hand, the material stays the same. When you're using a paving machine, some of the granules will stay at 10, 11 mil, and some others will lay at 10, 11 and then spring to 12 to 13.
Right, okay. Okay.
But, that's where the anomaly sometimes comes in. If you can get a decent granule, it works fine. But then, if you get a big mixture, some areas you think, well, I've laid that at 10 mil and now it's 15.
Aye.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
I think.
And then you're left with no rubber left.
Kevin, we did a research program quite a few years ago now, and we looked at the catalysts, the type, the size, grade of the rubber, thickness. We tried to correlate it to a binder percentage and what was actually making a minimum 0.5 megapascals tensile strength pass for world athletics for non-porous systems. And what we came back to the conclusion was there's so many variables in an athletics track that it's impossible to say, and I think that the bottom line is that it all comes back to the experience and knowledge of the installer. So like say yourself on site, if you see something that's wrong or you spot it, then it comes back to your experience. And as David mentioned, there's you can go on 4 or 5 different manufacturers, big manufacturers, and they'll give a lot of information about the technical makeup and the installation process. But the bottom line is that it comes back to the person that's installing it on site, and they can't always ensure what arrives on site is what's been tested in the lab. And that's a fallback of that's a fall down of some programs in that you test a product in a lab and you never check the site installation. The UKA, and I said it a couple of times in the presentation, the UKA assessment, in my opinion, is probably better because it's checking what the end user experiences. So the safety is paramount, and likewise we're checking performance testing in it as well. And I like that about the UK system. A lot of other governing bodies have done the opposite. They've said, right, we'll certify products because there's a commercial value in that, but we're not interested in certifying tracks or certifying installations. So yeah, it's a tricky one because tracks are a lot more complicated and chemical reactions than artificial pitches or tennis courts. So
expensive mistakes.
Exactly.
Rely on the likes of yourself, Kevin, to get it half the time.
That's why I've got no hair.
Kev, one more thing I wanted to ask you was about line marking. Just briefly, I don't know how do you line mark yourself, or do you align with somebody else to do the line marking process?
Pete at Premier is my brother-in-law.
All right, I see. Okay.
So I got him into doing it. I knew it because he had an engineering architectural background, so I knew he'd be okay at the measuring and doing all that sort of stuff. So,
right, okay, so
I left it to him. Yeah, the trouble is though, they get so busy, and I think we are struggling for line markers, to be fair.
Yeah, I see that.
I mean, I've done work overseas, and the guys over there, they don't take the time like the guys here do.
Yeah.
I did a track in India, and the guy was finished in 2 days. Do you want me to write his certificate out now?
Yeah, but I mean I suppose that's a good point, Kevin. Is that a lot of times the line markers are doing the dimensional surveys, and there's a wee bit of a compromise there. But is that important at certain levels, and is it not? And that comes back to community and domestic tracks and
exactly.
Yeah,
training tracks, universities that they're not going to break any records, are they? So
no, but yeah, exactly. That's the point. Is it when it's a level 2 or European Championships, then the tracks need to be spot on and done correctly. So yeah, so I think has anyone got any more questions before we split here? I think we've recorded this, so we'll make it available for everyone. And if anyone's wanting any more information specifically about a unit or specifically about a test or the programme, please get in touch with myself or David. Just neil@sportslabs.co.uk or david@sportslabs.co.uk, and we can try and help you or point you in the right direction. And thank you everyone for coming on today.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, and hope everyone's safe and well, and we'll see you on the other side.
Cheers. Bye.